Reverend Craig is going to lead this conversation with these three men that I admire and that I love deeply so much for the way that you serve, for the way that you care in our community. We're so grateful for you, and I'm really excited about this, and I'm going to be quiet and walk away.
So I'm the control freak, and we'll keep things moving today. We have 4 questions that we are going to lift for our panel members. And the first one will be a way for them to sort of introduce themselves and their community. But the first question is, can you describe your church's approach toward loving your neighbors? And go ahead and kick it off, Matthew.
So I'm Matthew Best. I'm the pastor of Christ Lutheran Church in Allison Hill in Harrisburg, as well as the executive director of the health ministries at the church. Our church is very unique in the sense that we host 3 free health clinics that serve the community and the wider region as well. To give you a sense of those 3 clinics, there's a nurse-run clinic it's open every weekday. There's a dental clinic, and there's another nurse-run clinic for more chronic conditions. And over the course of the year, we probably have about right around 10,000 visits to the clinics. And so for us, how we love our neighbors, very simply, is very much a focus on healing, a focus on seeing the humanity, quite literally, of the people who are coming in. One of the nurses told me that one of the things that is really key to what they do is that when somebody comes in, it doesn't matter what their condition is in, if they're high on something or if they've made some bad decisions or whatever the case may be, there is no judgment placed. And that's something that I've heard several of the speakers talk about, and it's extremely important because you cannot see the humanity of someone if you're too busy judging. And you're also then not seeing your own humanity as well. And so for us, it is the literal act of providing healing in a medical way, but also spiritual and other ways.
My name is Josiah Ludwick. I am one of the co-pastors at Harrisburg First Church of the Brethren, right around the corner from Rev Matthew, actually. We're on Hummel Street. We've been loving our neighbors for quite some time. Our church has been there since the late 1800s. One of the things that I would highlight is we've sort of created a couple different organizations that are now their own thing. Most of you probably have never heard of my church, but a lot of you may have heard of Brethren Housing Association. And Brethren Housing was founded in the late 80s. And now if you look at their budget versus my church's budget, it's like 4 times or 5 times what ours is. So they're their own thing, but it started from just kind of similar to what we heard this morning, some people that had an idea and made it happen, and then it grows over time. Starts with something small. Our community ministry started in the 60s and then incorporated itself as Brethren Community Ministries, otherwise known as BCM Peace, in 2000. And so those 3 organizations have been in our building for a while. Something we realized in the last couple years is our church is a small-ish group of people, 60 or 70. We don't have a lot of energy to create something new and do something big. But what we have is we have a good reputation and we have a lot of space. And so collaboration has become a big part of what we do as far as recognizing that there was a community organization that was mission aligned, looking for space, and we had some conversations and opened the doors. And so now every Saturday there's hot breakfast and English classes and money for IDs and all kinds of stuff going on in our building that we're not doing. But we were communicating very well with that organization. It has benefited our church in that a lot more people are coming through for that particular thing, but also our folks are showing up on a Saturday. We heard earlier about people that don't have a great relationship with church, being around for mercy kinds of things. And a lot of folks that have had a bad relationship with church are coming on Saturdays to help out with that pretty amazing program. That's called Gather the Spirit for Justice. And they do a thing on Sundays, like a warming and cooling center at our church as well. So that's a snippet of some of what loving our neighbor means. It's very much not come to church on Sunday, hope they come. It's very much our building is open all the time, and it does take some letting go of, like, sometimes there's going to be syrup on the ground in our fellowship hall. Like, it's just what it is. And it does take some of that letting go to have that sense of collaboration and to have those open doors.
Good afternoon. My name is Jameson McLaughlin. I serve as pastor at Goodwin Memorial Baptist Church in Uptown section of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And loving our neighbor shows up in many ways. We help with food. We help with utilities. We help with clothes. We've adopted 2 schools. And we do all those things. We have a community development corporation where we're looking to build houses for those who are struggling with housing. But what I'm actually most proud of is listening. Even this week, we had a listening session where we invite neighbors of the community to come and tell us what's going on, what are they passionate about, and what can we as the church do to assist them. One of the things that I said when I first got here is, we don't want to tell you, we're so great, come visit us. We want to tell you, you're so great, we want to spend time with you. And so we've been intentional with having things like pop-up church, study sessions, and just fellowship in neighborhood apartment complexes and doing things in the community. So rather than waiting for people to come to Goodwin, we want to bring Goodwin to other people. So
I'm going to use all my speaking time to introduce the second question, because I want to kind of put it in context. Tomorrow I'm preaching an installation service, and the pastor for their text picked the story of the bent-over woman. And what was so fascinating in working with the story this week is, it's one of the few healing stories where the individual does not ask or seek out healing themselves. Jesus comes to or confronts them. And the piece of the story that was really powerful in working with the commentaries is that the woman was so used to her daily life that she didn't even think of a need for healing. Well, as I've sat here this morning, I have been totally convicted, and I'm going to rewrite the second half of my sermon. Because when we put it in the context of the issues today, we cast those who we serve in the role of the bent-over woman and think of ourselves as the messianic figure coming in. In my work in congregational development, I see it the other way around. I see so many of our local churches in the role of the bent-over woman, telling themselves, gee, we'd love to help, but our insurance provider says this is a liability. Or, this year's budget is set and it's sort of a deficit, so maybe 3 years from now. Or the bylaws say. All of those are evidence to me of the bent-overness of our communities. And I think it is those whom we serve who touch and change and heal us in powerful ways. So now I'm going to pass the offering plate after that sermon. But rather, what I'd like to do is to ask these 3 individuals. It's very clear just from your short introduction that your congregations have bucked that trend. They rose up in many ways and overcame bylaws and budgets and restrictions and embraced the role of healer. Can you talk with me a little bit about your congregation and how that happened, how they were able to manifest that? Oh, yeah. Would you start, Joseph?
Wow. I mean, our congregation has had sort of, a characteristic of just trying stuff. I'm not sure where that was planted or why, but it's kind of a beautiful thing. You try it, see if it works. Doesn't work, try something else. It's kind of easy on some level to lead a group that's willing to let go of some things to try something, right? Overcoming bylaws, man, you just said the word bylaws, and it was a gut punch. Things like that can be such a crippling force when we try to imagine what could be. And the story about Gather the Spirit I shared a moment ago, a lot of churches would never have even imagined, well, why would we it didn't work out somewhere else, so we don't want them to be our problem, that kind of thing. And instead, each organization has sort of invigorated the other. And we've seen people come to be a part of our faith community and be involved in some of our other programs from the different organizations. We've seen people from our church get involved with some of what they're doing. So I guess the short version is try stuff, and if it doesn't work, try something else. I guess that's where I'd leave that.
So I want to be transparent, and I hope this doesn't put congregation in a bad light, but the reality is, at least for me in my context, everybody's not on board. Everybody is not missional. And so part of the prayer was, do we wait for everybody to get on board, or do we just go? And we decided we just go. And so one of the things that I think many leaders struggle with is they want the elders and the deacons and the leadership to agree with everything that the vision God has given you. And sometimes that doesn't happen. And so you have to trust God enough to go out with the few that believe in God and have a heart for that. And then what has happened in our case, it has become contagious. And part of the, as I would say, if I was at Goodwin, the shout for me, the celebration for me is other people who are watching the congregation from the outside looking in. They see the service, the genuine heart and love for people, and then they come on board, whether it be partnership with another church, nonprofit, or they join the church. And so operating in faith, going out, and then hopefully the culture will shift to have more of the love of Christ.
Could I just say something real quick? I really love that, just go. And recognizing also that as some people will catch that and come along, not everybody can come along. And that's really sad when, like that elder that you were mentioning, or whoever it is, you're just going and they just can't. And so that's part of what, we have to be willing to let go of that to go where we're supposed to go sometimes. So thank you for that.
No problem.
So in our case, the answer is it was forced. Quite literally, we proclaim life, death, and resurrection, right? Yeah, Christ Lutheran Church has lived that. And while that sounds great, death is a reality, and it's painful. So the congregation goes back to 1890. By 1960, there were 3,000 members in that congregation. And by 1990, 30 years later, there were 7. 7. The running joke that I always say is even Jesus had more people than that. So the bishop at the time sent a pastor to shut it down, which in a Lutheran context, the bishop can't force the congregation to shut down. So you send someone to kind of guide the congregation through that. And her name was Jody Stiliker. She was a registered nurse with Holy Spirit Hospital. And so she would be with the congregation on Sunday, those 7 faithful people, and be doing nursing during the week. And after a couple of years, she went over to St. Francis Catholic Church on Market Street. They have a soup kitchen that operates every day, and said, hey, can I have a little bit of space to do some community health? And then they needed the space back, so they said, we need our closet back. So she came back to the congregation, and she said, there's a need. We have space. What do you want to do? And those 7 people voted unanimously, which is a miracle in a church, to move forward with the health ministries without having any idea of what that would mean. And so that's when it started. And what died was the notion that they would ever be a 3,000 member congregation again. It died, and it was buried. And the resurrection is the health ministries. And since that time, our congregation is now the most diverse congregation in our synod in every way that you can envision. It's not huge, 35 on a Sunday. We're a poor congregation, and 90% of what we're able to do, the funding, comes from outside sources, which is a beautiful thing, because when people don't have money, they don't fight over it. And there's not the control issues that some of your congregations struggle with. And so we're just grateful to be there, and then to be able to do what was started a quarter of a century ago, and to struggle to keep trying to figure out how to keep it going.
Excellent. So for our third question, one of the greatest challenges is finding a word of hope, especially in the process of some of the suffering and death that precedes the resurrection, or the risk taking, whether it fails or whether it's challenging powerful members. What is a word of encouragement, hope, or prayer that you would give these folks this day about moving forward? And Pastor James, will you start?
So, very briefly, one of the things I'll say is be careful about metrics. Because sometimes we feel like if 1,000 people haven't come to our mission or even our worship service, we're not being successful. Jesus left the 99 to get one. And so know that if you're impacting just one life, you are making a difference. And so that's my word of encouragement.
I would echo that. And I would say, for me, I told somebody, and I say this oftentimes, my metric of success for worship is I have two things that I can control, or at least have some influence over. Was good news proclaimed, and did everyone get offered communion? Everything else is bonus. I can't control if somebody's going to come in and they're high on something. I can't control if someone's going to have a mental health crisis in the middle of worship and start yelling out this, that, and the other thing. I can't control where the kids are going to, during the children's sermon, if I can hold their attention for 10 seconds, wow, that's amazing. But those are two things that I can control. And the beauty of that is it's not lowered standards, it's lowered expectations, in the sense that I have to be open more to seeing where the Spirit is going to do what the Spirit will do. I don't get in the way of what I expect the Spirit to do. It's letting go of control, which is a form of healing for me as well.
Yeah, you kind of let go. That's what I was going to say. Sort of discern what is it that we're holding on to that's keeping us from doing the thing, whatever the thing is, right? What are we protecting from who, right? And let go of that, because it's not ours anyway, right? If hopefully our churches aren't ours, hopefully our churches don't belong to us, and we're around because of God's purpose for us, right? And so I can't tell you how many times when we've let go of something that we thought was so necessary that God has done something else that's even cooler than what we imagined before. And so sometimes I was even blind myself to what it was we were holding on to. So taking that time and space to figure that out, what am I holding on to, letting go of it, and just seeing what God will do in the midst of that. That's going to be messy, though, and so you got to be ready for the messy, I guess. And some of us don't love that, which I understand. But yeah, so let go and be ready for the mess, but the mess, something beautiful is going to come out of that.
And I feel sort of convicted to do a moment of confession. It's often folks like me who have a title of congregational development that do the most harm. Because we come out, we roll out the assessments, the statistics, with 5-year, 10-year strategic plans, which is about one thing: control. So thank you for putting me and us in our place. That's wonderful, because I'm doing everything I can to get that old model changed. Because I think the real key, Pastor Jameson said, boils down to one word: listen. You said that in your first response. And that's both to the Holy Spirit and God's people. Our last question, and then we're going to have a little bit of time for some breakout groups, 4 breakout groups. How could you see our churches picking up on the Christian Churches United's vision and better uniting in love? Either what are some things that we could either start doing better that we haven't, or You know, as Josiah said, what are things that we could let go of? Whatever it is, but how could we do this uniting thing better?
So we actually, on Allison Hill, we just started having some conversation of how can we worship together next Holy Week? And not, let's do something and then we're going to do our own thing at our own churches. Nope, it's going to be, this is the thing that we're doing. Doesn't have to be complicated. And how do we do it not in any of our buildings? So for us on Allison Hill, we were talking about Maundy, Thursday. How do we do a mobile foot washing station around Allison Hill that involves some prayer, those type of things, and maybe come to a common location at the end and have a meal and some worship, those type of things. But I think that's really the key, is we got to get out of our buildings, because the church is not the building. The church is this is the church, right? And we all have different ideas, and so one of it is, it's kind of what we've been talking about, is we got to let go. We got to let go of being right. We got to let go of our theology is this, that, and the other thing, and these people are wrong, and this, that, and the other thing. Religion can have some problems. Faith is not about, it's not about the head knowledge. It's not about knowing about God. It's about knowing God, and we know God. We look around each other, and we see the image of God in all of its variety of forms in which God shows up. And so that's how we are united in love, is we see the humanity, we see the image of God, and we take opportunities to do that with those that are willing to come on board, and we always offer invitation for people to be able to do that.
I think that collaboration in general, I talked about that at the beginning, is key. And a good example is what Rev Matthew talked about already, something that we're thinking about for next year. But even beyond sort of, I feel like often, like as a pastor, a lot of my time and energy is spent around like figuring out what we're going to do for our stuff, right? And not thinking about, oh, Pastor Chris is over there doing something. I wonder how we could maybe, Bishop Thomas is right up the block, Rev Matthew's around the corner. Like, I wonder how we could, instead of each doing our thing for our little corner, like, what could we maybe do together? And beyond like block parties are fun, stuff like that. But beyond something that's like a one day, okay, and then we'll see you next year. Like, how can we be the church together? Remain distinct, right? We have our stuff, but like, what are the things that we can do as one? And I think if you think about it, if you go back to the history of what this organization, CCU, is, it's essentially a bunch of churches being like, we want to do something about the unhoused community, and we can't do it because we're too small to do it by ourselves, so let's get together and do that, right? So sort of that model of like, and not just the pastors either, like, I said a bunch of pastors' names because I'm friends with a bunch of these guys, but like, who do we know from other faith communities, and not even just churches, that we could like, collaborate, build relationship among ourselves, and really make an impact being the church outside of our buildings.
Amen. I agree with everything that's been said. I'll pose first a question. What would it look like if churches shared a calendar? And we actually were in tune with what one another is doing. So often, churches can be on the same block and not know that they are doing something at the same time. I think it all starts with conversation. I don't know how you love people and you don't talk to them. And so part of it is we first have to get to having more conversation with each other, and then doing things long term. Like you said, the block parties are great. That's cute. The bouncy house and all that. The Easter egg hunt coming together, all that's cute. But when are we going to have something that God has called us to do that really changes lives, that's really transformative, that's rooted in the gospel, not clicks and likes on Facebook? And so I think we have to continue to keep the main thing, and be intentional about having conversation and be open to dismantling assumptions. And I say that because a lot of times churches have an assumption about one another without ever having a conversation with one another. And so let's break down the barriers of assumptions, be willing to have conversation, and be willing to share things. And then I just believe God will take care of the rest.
Excellent.